Good evening. This is the work session and a collective committee meeting of City Council of Avon Lake. And the very first item that we have on our agenda, we have a guest here that's been invited from it's going to be giving us a presentation on pavement preservation, is James Golden of Pavement Management Group. Mr. Liskovic, I'm used to looking at down here to the right for you. You're down here on the left. Is there something that you would like to add in order to introduce?
Absolutely. So, as you had stated, James is here to kind of give us an insight on a change in methodology and philosophy on how we maintain our roadway network. Just a little history. PMG was brought into the city in 2023 to do the first assessment. We completed, as the process I've laid out, a reassessment of half the city last year. We will do the corresponding half this year. And we'll keep progressing and gathering data points and refining our process as we go. As I think everybody's well aware, we've got a pretty well split makeup of concrete and asphalt streets, and so that's a lot to discuss. So what James and I have discussed or have talked about is we're going to dive into the asphalt side of things. There's a lot more tools in the toolboxes to address asphalt streets. And additionally, our asphalt streets are probably the ones that are in the worst condition compared to the concrete streets. He'll kind of dive into that. And then what we'd like to do is, after we do the next rating this year, is we'll come back in the fall after we've got that and kind of start covering concrete streets a little bit more and methodology and just kind of tie things all together. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James to go through just his background and information for the city.
Mr. Golding, go ahead.
Good? Okay, perfect. So I'm used to standing and talking with my hands, so I will do the best to sit still and go through this presentation with all of you. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to serve your city. It's been an honor, it's been a pleasure. Just a quick background on myself. I've been fortunate to be involved in the pavement management space, doing this type of work and assessments all the way back in 1999. So this is something I've been doing for a long time. I studied under a civil engineer way back in the day. Back then, we had to do everything boots on the ground. So for any of the engineering individuals in the room, John specifically, this was a very heavy manpower, labor type of process going back 20 years ago. Through innovation, data analytics, and those types of things, we're able to get these types of assessments done at a higher level of service, more objective in nature, and I'll outline those processes as I go through the report. But it allows us to get these things done pretty quick for all of you and keep that data coming in as you're out there making the impacts, repairing roadways, so we can start measuring how we're performing over time. I'm very blessed. We work in about 8 different states. Central Ohio is home. I live in Heath, Ohio. For those that might be familiar with it, it's near Newark. About a 2 hour, 40-minute drive on up here today. It was pretty nice. So. With that said, to John's point, you've got about 111 centerline miles of roadway. The purpose of this report is to give you an overview and a summary of the current state of the network, but we're going to focus on the asphalt roadways because they need the most attention. Asphalt roadways, as John knows for sure, asphalt is a flexible type of pavement. Concrete is a rigid type of pavement. Those two types of surfaces deteriorate very differently, and they behave differently. So the asphalt roadways, we have more tools in the toolbox and opportunities available to us to work towards preservation, preserving these roadways, setting them up for success, keeping them lasting longer. Not that we don't have those similar opportunities with concrete, just a little bit different. And we wanted to focus on those with all of you today. So the majority of the presentation will be about the asphalt roadways. This report, was just published, and I'm going to kind of walk you through this a little bit. So this report will be available to all of you, obviously. And by all means, as you go through it, talk amongst yourselves, feel free to reach out with me to make any additional questions. I'm happy to be that resource and provide any insights, as well as working through John. So what we do is we introduce the project, the scope of the work, the objectives. Pavement management is not just a roadway condition assessment. Pavement management encompasses taking your 111 centerline miles, organizing all roads into block-by-block sections, within each section tracking specific pieces of information, length, width, area, functional classification for prioritization, surface type, all these different things that would drive a decision as to what we would do with that roadway. Once we've got the inventory, our company goes out and provides a high definition video capture that some of you may be aware of or have seen. And that capture process allows us to get eyes on the pavement. We're really focused edge to edge. And then we have a combination of artificial intelligence, no third parties, it's PMG developed over all of our 20 plus years of this discipline and expertise that gives us an assistance. And what we're doing is we're looking for all of the different types of distresses that are happening on your roads. And that's defined in the report as I kind of scroll down through our scope of work. These distresses can be load associated, structure related, they can be climate related. So there's a balance of those types of things. We follow a very specific standard, which I hope you all appreciate. It's an ASTM standard developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So this isn't just James driving around the city of Avon Lake calling out numbers left and right. We have to do the hard work. We have to identify the distresses, document the severity level, the quantity. That goes into the calculation. So as you can imagine, load-associated distresses are going to carry a higher deduct point system versus climate-related issues. Okay? So that's kind of an overview of all that. Once we've got that data back, we're able to start publishing the data and publishing the results and taking a look at it. And the first part of this is your project summary results. So what we did is we did the process, to John's point, about half the city each year, and then we got all the work history information back of all the work you did last fall, basically, finalized. We've got your information here. So when we take a look at the entire network, all of your concrete, your asphalt combined, 111 centerline miles, average network PCI, pavement condition index, is a 73. That's on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 considered to be worst, 100 considered to be excellent, right? So just go back to grade school. It's your typical grading system, like a rubric. Within that 0 to 100 scale, we have 5 condition categories that you'll see. Excellent, good, fair, poor, and failed. So every single segment of roadway has been given a rating in a condition category. This is the collective. We wanted to break down both of the two networks because it's about a 60-40 split. About 55, 60%, the numbers are in here, of your roads are concrete, and the other 40, 45% are going to be asphalt. So I broke those two networks out. And you can see the concrete street system has an average condition of a 76. Very common for concrete roadways to perform a little better than asphalt roadways. Their deterioration curve is a lot less than an asphalt roadway. You can see, so 60 centerline miles versus 51 centerline miles. Your asphalt roadway network came back as a 69, which is in fair condition, and that's after these recent updates to your network. Through the report, we can get into the methodology, our data collection efforts. It's all very transparent. We want you to see that. We want to be showing you how transparent and objective we are in our collection process, our analysis. And then we talk about those pavement distresses that I just mentioned, 20 different distresses defined by the ASTM standard. You can see condition assessment, the mention of the standards right through here that we adhere to. So once that data comes back, we have quality control and quality assurance in the company to ensure that the numbers being published to you are accurate and they're following the standard. Very important. And I probably wouldn't be here 20 some years later if we weren't adhering to those standards. So very important stuff. Once we've got that data, we've got the conditions, now we can have some fun. Now we know the distresses, the conditions, and that allows us to start taking a look at maintenance repair correlation. So if a roadway is in this type of condition and has these types of distresses, what is the opportunity available for that roadway right now? Think of your vehicles. We all drive cars to some extent. They're all different ages, different makes, models. And what do you get when you buy a car? You get a maintenance schedule, right? Every roadway has its own maintenance schedule, and that's what we're really talking about here. This is the maintenance and repair qualification section of our report. And it talks about the condition categories and the maintenance repair buckets that PMG uses. And if we start from excellent and work our way down to failed, you have rejuvenation, which is we'll call a top of curve treatment. It's something you're looking to do at a roadway early on in its age. Think about waxing your vehicle, ceramic coating, keeping the paint clean, keeping the paint good, protecting the paint of a car. Preventive maintenance. That can be your crack seal program, which we've already got a pretty good crack seal program going on here within the city. So we're able to qualify what roads are good candidates for those areas. You know, think about your typical preventive maintenance on your vehicle, rotating the tires, your oil changes, things of that nature. Then you have preservation, and this is an opportunity for all of you that we're not fully leveraging right now, where we see some low-hanging fruit where we can do that for our roadways. The preservation bucket, that's gonna be your fair category roadways. You know, so a little bit more, maybe your tune-ups, you know, things like that. Keep that engine going, keep that oil clean, you know, in the vehicle. We're trying to extend the life of the roadway, everybody. That's our goal here, right? Then, unfortunately, as the road ages, you get into your, right here, your structural and your rehabilitations. And, you know, what we've all learned is, you guys all know it, pretty expensive to make those repairs. It's pretty expensive to perform a full reconstruction on an asphalt roadway here in the city. So what we're trying to do is prevent that. Now, you have a lot of needs in areas of roads that need that. So we have to perform those activities. What we're trying to target here is, once that takes place, how do we set that roadway up for success moving forward so it can have a long, healthy life? This is a graphic that I like to publish, showing you the value of preservation versus what we call a conventional rehabilitation strategy. So we also call it worst to first. So if you take a look at roadways and just operate from the mindset of, let's go find the worst ones and fix them, very expensive. And if we're not performing those routine preventive preservation activities, that's what your black lines are showing you in here, right? The road's gonna dip off after about a 15-year period of time. You go spend $154 a square yard, comes back up to 100, resets the life, and then we're hoping for another 15 years. The preservation mindset says, sure, we're gonna have to do these reconstructs and structural events, but after that, let's take a look at where the opportunities are for the time-driven preservation. You see that green line throughout. You're seeing we're able to maintain that roadway at a higher level of service. Very good condition over a longer extended period of time. So that's the process that we're talking about throughout the rest of the presentation. And I'm sorry, my scrolling wheel is very fast, I just learned. This graphic right here really does, in my opinion, hopefully you'll see it too, does a pretty good job of tying all the pavement management and PMG experience into a single graphic. You start with taking a look at what distresses are occurring, what severity levels of the distresses are there. That goes into creating the score, PCI score, 0 to 100. We break it down into the 5 condition categories, and those categories help drive to one of those types of maintenance and repair buckets. And as you can see with the dollar signs over to the right, you know, obviously, the more worse off a roadway is, the more expensive it's going to be to take care of. You know, just kind of hammering home the point. Then we kind of jump into the findings of the report. And again, the focus is more along the lines of the asphalt roadway network. And I've got that number right here. It represents 46% of all your roads. So it's a good number. And that average PCI score of 69 for the asphalt roadways. This is a table that publishes all of our data for you. It allows you to take a look at every single condition category right now and see, well, what percentage of the network is in excellent, good, fair, poor, and failed. Really good metrics for you to take a look at. And you can see that 20% of the network is in excellent, 41% is in good, 28% fair, 9% poor, 2% failed. Yet that 10% in the bottom, very expensive to repair. So a couple notes there. We're also able to publish a wide variety of different charts for visual graphics and representation. You can see the centerline miles by condition, the pavement area by condition. Functional classification is important. We're able to do that as well. Is this roadway a arterial, high priority, collector, a little bit lower, or a residential serving 10 residents? Those things are important when we make these decisions on what type of maintenance and repair actions we're going to take. And you can see the surface type, the condition by surface type. Really spelled out here. You know, it's breaking down that percentage of concrete and asphalt and then the conditions there as well. You have a couple gravel roadways in the network. They're not really affecting too many. I think there was 7 or 8 pavement sections that are classified as gravel. So they're not really impacting one way or the other. I wanted to point that out. Okay. We tie everything to maps through our solution. Our solution is web-based. It's called ArcGIS-based, which the city has access to and license to. So all of our data is made visualized through mapping. This just kind of highlights. So when you want to take a look at the map, remember those condition categories, the 5 colors? You can see them right here. And I know maybe from this perspective a little bit difficult, but get it in your hands and it's easy to read. You're looking for the blues and greens, everyone, right? We want to see blues and greens, but we can quickly isolate the reds, the oranges, and the yellows. And through the solution, we can filter through to see exactly what's happening, where it's happening, throughout the city. From this point, we start getting into these recommendations with some real world examples. So this is a little bit along the lines of, the life cycle of an asphalt roadway here in the city of Avon Lake. We start out here, it's in really good shape, brand new, maybe within a couple of years old. This is your excellent condition category. And we always publish roadways that are yours for these examples after the latest condition. There's no cookie cutter, type of things. These roadways are yours, so you can recognize these. This is Walker Road. It's section 4, has a PCI of 100. This is where we can take a look at the rejuvenation bucket. This type of roadway would be a good candidate to have that type of treatment put on that road early on. And you can see through each one of these categories, the average cost, $1 to $2 a square yard, average life extension, 5 to 7 years. Those types of things are within the report. As a pavement ages and gets to be about, say, 5 to 7 years old, what happens? Roadways start to oxidize. The biggest thing that we notice, if you don't know distresses or a distress geek like me, the color looks a lot different, right, everyone? It's not that dark pigment. That's because it's starting to oxidize, right? So that's called weathering. The pavement, the fine particles in the pavement are starting to weather away. It turns gray, and these are longitudinal and transverse cracks. So this is climate related at this point, which is good to know. This is not a structural issue. This is where we can identify roads for a good crack seal candidate that would be really good served through a crack seal. Again, $1 to $2 a square yard and a life extension of about 7 to 10 years for this type of activity.
What street was that?
My apologies. This is Elmwood Drive, section 7. The condition was a 76. Thank you for asking. Here we've got Redwood Boulevard, section 6, PCI of a 57. So remember, critical condition for all of us is right around a 55, everyone. Once a road hits around a 55, we're starting to get to the point of no return where we have to look to a structural, expensive mill overlay reconstruct event. This roadway is right on the cusp. That's why I put it in here. This is a roadway that we could, if we acted soon or now, right, there could be an opportunity to preserve it, take care of it for another 12 to 15 years. And these preservation methods are $8 to $12 a square yard and gives you another about 5 to 7 years of life extension. Then we get into these categories, which you all are pretty familiar with. These are your poor and failed roadways. What you're noticing here is distress is now at a medium severity level. You see how those cracks are wide open? If you look to the right, you see that network of cracking. It's called alligator cracking. Okay? This is load associated. So this is caused from a structural stress and strain over time to that area. It's a failed area.
The name of the street?
I'm sorry?
The name of the street?
Yes, this is Avalon Drive, section 1, condition of a 47.
Thank you.
And then your failed roadways look a little bit like this. That network of cracking is more expansive and it's more severe if you take a look at that. If you look at those areas. This is Avondale Avenue, section 1, PCI of a 17. So 0 to 100, 17, 47, so on and so forth. These types of roadways are recommendations for that reconstruction event. The base is compromised. It's time to reset this life cycle, basically. From here, we're able to start looking at the total opportunity cost. So when we take an opportunity, it's about $281,000. Looks like I have a comma missing, so my apologies in my report. About $281,000 of opportunity for that type of activity. About $163,000 of opportunity for a maintenance crack seal opportunity right there. Preservation, about $1.3 million. So there's opportunity in that bucket right now where we can save those roads. And then you have your structural and rehabilitation. I highlighted them on purpose because those two numbers combine to create what's called your backlog number, which we'll talk about. I define what backlog is in this section of the report, the backlog analysis and the funding implications. Again, we're taking a look at roadways that are at or below a 55 condition, okay? If you have an average of a 69, you've got quite a few roadways that are in those categories. And we can take a look at some key observations I put in here for you. Approximately 25% of all fair roadways that are right above that, they dip into those other categories year in, year out if nothing happens to them. So that's a good indicator for you. Based on that table 2, that backlog number, be prepared. It's big. It's $20.1 million to solve those problems right now. So if we wanted to eliminate the backlog, that's the number it would take based on actual costs that you have been spending to rehabilitate your roads. The total area in need of a structural or rehabilitation event is 38%. So it's a pretty big number. So 38% of all your asphalt roads are in need of something like that right now. Then we talk about conventional approach versus optimized approach. I've already been talking about that. I won't spend a whole lot of time here. Conventional, again, if you go back to my chart, that's your black lines, right? We're going to go mill and overlay, and then we're not going to do much of anything, maybe a crack seal a couple times over a 15 to 20 year period, or structural. Rehabilitation. Whereas an optimized approach is that those blue lines you saw. We're going to still do those events, but after we do those events, we're going to start taking a look at these time treatments to keep that road in good condition over a long period of time. From here, I was able to put together what we call budget or target-driven scenarios. I call them what-if scenarios. This is fun for everybody. This is, crack one at it. So what we can do is we know the current overall average PCI of your asphalt roads, right? 69. And what this shows you is at different funding points, following different approaches, what is that expectation over a 5-year period? How do we know? PMG has been tracking your roads. We know how they deteriorate year in, year out. We know what type of point per drop per year. We know what type of dollars and cents you've been spending. We know all of those, the impacts that you've been making. So I'll run through these pretty quick. At about $1 million a year, which is around what we're spending in the asphalt network, with all the funding sources coming in together, you can see we're expecting the network average PCI to actually drop 4 points over 5 years, from a 69 to a 65. That's what it's showing. The next one, the orange, is, well, what if we continue doing the conventional approach, but we spend 1.5 every year? You can see that number gets you a little bit better, 67 PCI, still not maintaining the 69. Then that's the next step. How do I break the 69 threshold, get to at least a 70? And I will tell all of you a C-, right? That's a pretty reasonable, healthy benchmark. That's benchmark number 1 for all of our clients. We try to get these roads to about a 70. And you can see it's going to take $2 million a year, so basically doubling the effort and initiative to get the same impact to a 70. The next light blue color, however, is that same dollar amount, $2 million, but we're going to follow the optimized approach. What does that mean? We're still going to spend 70% of our budget doing the reconstructs and the structural. You have the needs there, but we're going to start allocating about 30% of the budget towards the preservation activities. You're making more impact. So that's how we're able to take the same dollar amount, but gain 3 points over 5 years. That's what I wanted to show. Now, the inverse of that is, what if we don't do any type of preservation activity and we want to maintain that or get to a 73? Right? It's going to take $2.5 million each year over 5 years. I assumed a 3% inflation rate. We all know what happened over the last 5 years with construction costs. They skyrocketed, right? You're seeing it in what's happening out here. I can't predict the future. I wouldn't be here today if I could have predicted all of that. But we have those abilities to put in an inflation rate. And are we able to keep up with inflation? Or that's why I call them what-if scenarios. Well, what if inflation was going to go to 7%? We can do all of that with you, okay? And then finally, we love to try to work with our clients to get them to a 75 overall PCI. And that's the green one over there. Following a conventional approach, this is showing you $3 million. Now, I can provide a wide variety of things. So the key takeaways here are, at about a $2 million budget, we can get to a 73 PCI from the 69. That's a 4-point increase by just starting to layer in some of these preservation concepts while still working. The majority of your budget is still going to go to those reconstructs. They have needs. We don't want to abandon those projects. We want to take care of those as well. If I had to assume or make a guess, to get to a 75 following the preservation activities, that would probably be around $2.25 million. And again, I can provide a wide variety of these. I want to just give you something to look at. The other thing that's important when we take a look at these types of things is what I call the completion cycle. How long does it take me to get back to a roadway, right? So if we spend X amount of dollars on this road, How long does it take for me to get back to that road in these different scenarios? That's what the pie chart is showing you. So at $1 million a year, we're about a 22-year life cycle, meaning we're going to go reconstruct it, do a couple crack seals, and in 22 years, we're going to come back to it just because of the money and the funding that's available to us. And you can see the light blue, that's around 11 years. So we're cutting that timeline in half, keeping roads at or above a really good condition threshold. That's what we're aiming to show you. From here, we provide a conclusion and then just kind of wrap things up into our key findings for you in the report. And that's really about it. So again, this was our scope of work, come through at a very high level, follow standards, produce high accurate results for all of you, and obviously give you some things to think about, towards the initiatives. So that kind of concludes my presentation for today. What type of questions can I answer for all of you?
We're going to open it up to questions with council members. Who would like to be the first? Don't be shy.
I just
Mrs.
wanted to
Gentry?
say thank you for the presentation. It was very good and very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Zuber?
I'd like to get a printout, this document printed out for me.
Absolutely. John, is that something you can provide?
Yes, I will make sure everybody gets a copy of it.
Thank you. Digitally, Mr. Liskovic, and print out.
Yep.
Please, thank you, in color. Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question. You talked about prior to crack seal, let's have rejuvenation. What does that mean? What does
Yeah.
that entail?
Excuse me, I probably should have had some more water earlier. Rejuvenation is an application process that's putting an emulsion into the pavement, and it's rejuvenating the asphalt.
Emulsion, you said?
Yeah, it's an emulsion-based product. You're basically looking at, there's two components to asphalt, not to get too scientific. There's asphaltenes and maltenes, right? Maltenes are what we're trying to keep flexible. Remember, asphalt's supposed to be flexible. Unfortunately, asphalt is not as flexible as it used to be 20, 30 years ago. That's why you see this all over the country. It's because the refining process of a barrel of crude oil has gotten very good, everyone, if you think about that. What you're left with at the bottom of the barrel of the oil, your crude, is your asphalt product, those two components. Rejuvenators aim to penetrate into the asphalt, adhere to those maltenes, and keep them in really good shape. So that surface level cracking, we can't solve that, but we can mitigate and delay. That's what we're doing with those types of products.
Thank you. I have another question for our Public Works Director. So once these items are identified and we have a budget we need to work with, of course, and this is probably something that's going to be discussed again on Wednesday at the Public Service meeting. At that point, we go out for an RFQ to have those projects done, or is this part of what PMG provides to us?
So what PMG provides is kind of the roadmap of how we want to deal with it. And then obviously we go through prioritizing, putting together a budget, and then at that point the city would actually solicit our bids for the various different methodologies to treat our roads.
Thank you, because this would also provide the basis for what the civil engineers will be putting together as a specification. So each street has its own spec instead of having a generic asphalt street. So if something needs a base, it needs a base, or it might not have a base now. You said that you're going to be focusing on asphalt. Is there any help you can provide to us with concrete?
Absolutely.
And can you just briefly give us an idea of what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you take a look at your concrete pavements, there's a few ways to handle those and address those. It's up to the city, it's up to the Public Works Director to provide the input on that. I consult on that as well. There are milling of the concrete pavements, putting what's called like a stress absorbing membrane in place, and then you can put asphalt on top. Kind of converting from a concrete to an asphalt type of a surface. And then from there, you can start all of these different types of rejuvenation, preservation, treatments. Now, if you want to keep your concrete, right? That process is already very well documented and laid out in those costs. You're looking at either slab by slab replacements, and we can help identify those. We've already got that data. So think of concrete, you've got maybe a mile of concrete road out there, yet only 30 panels need addressed. That's a pretty labor-intensive process, time-invasive process. We got to shut down the road, we got to tear it out, re-pour, wet cure, set up. but that is an option as well. In the concrete world, we don't have things like rejuvenators. Obviously, crack sealing, we obviously recommend sealing the joints if at all possible. Just like anything else between concrete and asphalt, keeping the water out is the priority. So if we can do that by sealing the joints, or if we've got joints that are starting to open up, we can router the joints and seal those. So I would probably focus a lot on joint repair, just like I focus on crack sealing for asphalt. Very important if we want to keep the concrete. But those are just a couple of the proven tactics, if you will, or approaches to concrete repair. And there are clients of ours, clients in this region, a lot of concrete up here that we can help provide. And I know John has access to some success stories and case studies for those as well.
Thank you for sharing. This is very interesting. Mr. Arnold?
Yeah, if you could, would you be able to supply John with some references of different cities you've worked with in the area
Absolutely.
and kind of what outcome they've seen?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
So we worked with, through Kelly Martin, it was the very first time that Mr. Golden came here with his firm. This is something that's been done in neighboring communities, and she saw the success of it, so she brought you here. So I think this is what, your second or third year maybe? Third year?
Yeah, I think this will be our third condition assessment, doing about 50% of the network each year.
Right. So some of the residents I know have contacted those of us that are ward council people and have asked, what are they doing out there? It looks like somebody's taking video.
Yep.
Because you literally go down the front, the center of the street. And then also we've been targeting areas for our civil engineer with core samples to see exactly what is there based upon what you have brought forward. Thank you.
Very good to hear, and that's very important. There's one thing from this type of a process, looking out down below and seeing what's really happening down there. Still recommend the core samples, very important to make the ultimate decision. Those core samples help drive the specification to get the right mix design, the right depths, the right base and everything. So that's good to hear.
Any further questions for Mr. Golden? Okay, then we're going to be moving on. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
We're going to have you disconnect from there, and we'll be good. Thank you so much. Okay, the next item with the collective committee meeting is Communications, Environmental, and Recreational Programming Committee. Mr. Shamir is under the weather tonight, and so this first item is going to be taken over by someone on his committee. I'm not sure who it is. Mr. Zuber?
Yeah,
Very
I believe
good.
it's
Thank
myself. The second item has been removed because that already was moved out of the committee. The only item, and we had the communications, I guess, person here explain that a little bit more. This is just a service agreement for services provided by the federal government. And this is just going to be a piece of legislation to authorize the mayor to sign this agreement. It's at no cost to the city.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Seeing none, okay, we're going to move on now to finance. Mr. Zuber?
The first item on the finance, we did have a finance committee this evening, are the issuance of notes, mainly for the purchase of the 2 fire trucks. We've had the chief come and lay out the savings that we can have, a couple $100,000 if we move quickly on the notes. And I know that the mayor's still in discussions about exactly what we're going to do with the bridge, but we would also have the notes possibly for that. The finance director did send out an amortization schedule based on a couple different scenarios that we had some discussion on. This was, the note sale is going to be moved to first reading and with a passage on the 24th, so we could keep on schedule so that we could still get those discounts for the fire department and those trucks.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Zuber on this item? Go ahead, Mr. Zuber, the next one.
The next item is the owner's rep for the fire station. We had a discussion about the RFQ. That is almost done. And I know the mayor talked a little bit about the outlines on that. And it's getting passed around amongst department heads and the law director I did speak with the fire chief today. We're either going to act on a motion to go out for qualifications for this on either the 10th or the 24th, most likely the 24th. When this is all done, I know Mr. Shamir had asked to see that also before it goes out, but I think we're pretty close. Hopefully by the end of the week, we may have a final product.
Thank you. Any
No,
questions?
Mayor, you may have
Yeah.
a comment on this.
Go ahead,
No,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you. No, you stated it well. We have a draft. We have combined a couple different things into an RFQ, put it within the proper format, and we'll also be including an AIA document for the potential firm that's chosen so that we have a contract sample to provide as well.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Mayor or for Mr. Zuber? Go ahead, Mr. Zuber.
The next is a transfer from the capital fund for the Alps of $1.675 million. This has been something that we've talked about in the budget. I understand it's a big number, but it is for the Alps project, and we've had discussions on this for, I think, going on 5 years now, since we first started discussing the Alps and what we're doing with that. This is just a simple transfer that we have to do and notify the state.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zuber on this item? Go ahead, Mr. Zuber, on the next one.
The final is a donation of $8,000 to the Village Project. They came in and had a work session with us, telling us what the Village Project is. The Village Project is a group that basically prepares meals for families with cancer here in Avon Lake, Avon, Westlake, and Bay Village. And we had made a donation to them in 2023, and there is a budget amount of $8,000 to do that again this year, and that was voted out of the Finance Committee this evening by 2-0 vote.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zuber on the Village Project? Very worthwhile project, Mr. Zuber. Thank you very much. The very next item is from Public Service Committee, which I chair, has to do with the Miller Road Sand Dredging Award. And we're going to be discussing this more at Wednesday's meeting at 5:30 in Public Service. And I'm going to be requesting for a suspension of the rule at the first reading due to scheduling the work so that the boat dock can open. And members of council have received a letter from the city engineer dated February the 28th that recommends that NGW Industrial LLC be awarded the contract at $73,415. And if you take your document and turn over on the back, you can see the comparison between the two bidders, and you can compare how they presented their project. And the city engineer has qualified NGW of Sheffield Village for this particular project. Any questions? We're going to have it on first reading suspension of the rule next week. Yes, sir, Mr. Zuber.
I just have a question. I know that for many years it's only been Huffman Equipment that has received the bid, and the bids were pretty close, only $400 difference, $425 difference. I don't know if the Public Works Director has any information on NGW, how long they've been around, or they've never bid before.
I know actually, they've been around as far as a company. I think they've reorganized a couple different times, business partners and whatnot, changes. But they've got experience with the same type of work that Huffman has done. They're located locally on the side of town, so they're also familiar with the ins and outs and navigation of the channels and stuff like that. So, I think. Why they haven't been, I couldn't ask you, but I know they're interested and
Sure.
want to take care of it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, then, seeing none, we're going to move on to legislation. I'm going to be asking, as we go through legislation, that if you have an item that you are expecting to have emergency passage on at the Monday meeting, that you explain it. Third reading, first is resolution number 25-23. Mrs. Ross Marin, would you read by title only?
Sure. A resolution authorizing and affirming the authority of the finance director for the city of Avon Lake to request changes on the banking accounts held by public depositories in accordance with codified ordinance section 232.04.
Are there any questions on this particular item? Seeing none, we're going to move on to now second readings. Mrs. Ross Marin, would you please read by title only ordinance number 25-32?
An ordinance amending certain sections of codified ordinance chapter 260, employees generally.
Any questions on this particular one? Mr. Zuber?
Yeah, this is going to be a suspension of the rule so that we can get this into effect for the non-bargaining employees, as the bargaining employees already have all these benefits in the union contract, and this is just updating that, so we wanted to move that as quick as possible.
Thank you for pointing that out. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Okay, we're going to move on now to ordinance number 25-35. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance adopting the City of Avon Lake disaster plan.
Any questions on this particular item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on now to ordinance number 25-36. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance amending codified ordinance section 238.01, community disaster plan.
Any questions on this particular item? Seeing none, we will move on now to ordinance number 25-37. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a Medic 10 for the fire department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Cos?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. This and the next two items, I have suspension of the rules on these, and the purpose for that is to secure the price that the proposed contract is set at. There could be some changes in the economy, in the market, and it was the feeling of the administration, fire chief, and the committee that the sooner we can get that passed and lock those prices in, the better. So that's for the next two items as well, too.
Thank you for the explanation. Any questions? Okay, we're going to go on now to ordinance number 25-38. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a engine 5 for the fire department and declaring an emergency.
And Mr. Cos has already stated why he's going to be going for suspension under the rule, emergency passage. Ordinance number, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to ordinance number 25-39. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a heavy rescue 7 for the fire department and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Cos has explained why we're going to be going to suspension of the rule, emergency passage. Any further questions? Yes, Mr. Zuber?
Just that these two are going to be paid for out of the notes that we are going to be issuing, that we had talked about in my committee report, and are all budgeted items.
Thank you, and that all works together. Very good. Thank you. The next item, Mrs. Ross Marin, resolution number 25-40. Please read by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Avon Lake adopting Vision Zero and the Lorraine County Comprehensive Safety Action Plan.
Thank you. Any questions on this particular one? Seeing none, we will move on to ordinance number 25-46. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the creation of the Probation Services Fund and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber?
Yeah, this and the next two are funds that have been requested by Judge Manning, and in discussions with her, she had requested that the council pass them on second reading based on the fact that they have to be, of course, go down to the state, and she's already put an order onto that effect.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Yes, Mr. Smith, good to see you.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everybody, and particularly Mr. Zuber, for helping me out while I'm recovering from this injury and taking over my HR duties as chairman, and looking forward to being back on a more consistent basis. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. It's good to see you here. Any other questions on this particular item? Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only, ordinance number 25-47.
An ordinance authorizing the creation of the Special Projects Fund and declaring an emergency.
Again, this is part of the courts, and Mr. Zuber has explained why there will be suspension of the rule, emergency passage. Any further questions on this one? Okay, moving along. Ordinance number 25-48. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the creation of the Legal Research and Court Computerization Fund and declaring an emergency.
Again, Mr. Zuber has described why this will be going for suspension of the rule, emergency passage on Monday. Any further questions on this particular one? Seeing none, that completes our agenda at this point. We're going to open it up to public input, and anyone from the public can come forward and speak. Give us your name and the city that you're representing. Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me.
Gerald W. Phillips. I'm a concerned citizen. The residents of Avon Lake, I remind you that you should watch the 6 programs that we have about the Brownfield Committee, the TIF, the implosion, the interim development agreement, and the 2 programs about local government, 1 and 2, that talks about qualities of openness, impartiality, honesty, integrity, and transparency. I want to talk about Ordinance 2549. This ordinance is authorizing, already post facto services that were previously and have been rendered. This ordinance should have been done earlier, and those services that have been rendered to date are really illegal and should be compensated for. This particular ordinance authorizes representation for the city of Avon Lake in the probate case. But the city's not a party to the probate case. City's not a party. Mayor Spetzel is the only individual who is a party, and he's an accused. So the city, to the extent that this ordinance is authorizing Sealy, Savage, Ebert, and Goulash to provide services, which they have already done, those services are legal. They're not authorized by law, and they shouldn't be compensated. Also, Mayor Ebert, on many occasions, had indicated that the Brownfield Committee is just a bunch of citizens getting together, okay? If that's true, then this city cannot provide legal representations or services for a bunch of citizens. So Mr. Ebert can't have it both ways. Either they are public officials of the city or they're not. Also, the Community Improvement Corporation, their directors are not covered by Section 1. Neither is the Brownfield covered by Section 1. Under the action that was filed to remove Mayor Spetzel, 733.72, Gary Ebert's supposed to be the prosecuting attorney. All right? But unfortunately, he's got a conflict of interest, and we file a motion to disqualify him. How can he represent his boss, who appoints him and whose compensation is dependent upon? Clearly a conflict of interest. We file a motion to disqualify. And Mr. Ebert, I believe you should look at the Rules of Professional Conduct 1.7. And I suggest you seriously look at it. And I think you need to withdraw as counsel, as prosecuting attorney. In lieu of the law director, the Lorraine County prosecutor should be appointed. When we look at 25.50, that ordinance, providing for representation for Mayor Spetzel, the city's not supposed to represent him. He's supposed to represent himself. It's indicated that the law director has a conflict. That's why he can't represent Mayor Spetzel. Well, at the same time, as prosecuting attorney, he can't represent the city in prosecuting it. As I said, he's got a conflict of interest. He's appointed by the mayor. His compensation is dependent by his mayor. His term is conditioned upon the mayor. Clearly a conflict of interest, and I really think you should seriously look at that, Mr. Ebert. Also, we got a problem in connection with McDonald's Hopkins. You guys already hired McDonald's Hopkins and Kevin Butler. He was in an executive session in connection with Todd Davis. So he represents the city already. You know, a conflict of interest exists when you represent the entity representation, and you also have it representing an individual from that city at the same time. You can look at Rules of Professional Conduct 1.10. You can't do that. So we'll be filing a motion to disqualify Kevin Butler from representing the mayor in that action of 733.72. For all residents, we will be posting the complaint for the removal of Mayor Spetzel on the Facebook page of Ohio Citizens for Honesty, Integrity, and Openness in Government, and you can read it for yourself. Also, if you want, you can go down to probate court and get a copy of it. There'll be a hearing tomorrow in probate court, 3 o'clock, concerning the removal of Mayor Spetzel. It's open to the public. All the public is more than welcome to come and observe those proceedings. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Come on forward and state your name and the city that you're from. Greetings.
Good evening. William Zimmerman, beautiful Avon Lake. I too am a concerned citizen. Mr. Phillips and I have made several programs. Unfortunately, because of the actions that have been going on in regards to the removal of the mayor, we haven't been able to get back to that. At some point, we will again, and hopefully be able to educate the citizens of the city on what's really going on. We look forward to doing it again. So let's talk about your job. Because as again, I feel as though I need to teach you. So ring the bell, class begins. You all work for us. You have the privilege of serving the citizens of the city. The privilege. What's happening with the mayor can show you what can happen if you don't do your job properly. We have an opportunity to make history here in Avon Lake because this has never been done before. And I believe it's warranted. Only time will tell. You have an obligation to represent us citizens, not your special interests, not the way that they used to do things, as Mr. Zilka has said to me on many occasions. You're supposed to do it legally, effectively, and without hesitation. The city and the citizens should come first and foremost. It's like Robert's rules. Newly revised shall govern the proceedings of council in all cases not provided by the chapter or the charter. Self-explanatory. I've argued with you about this several times. I don't understand the incompetency that continues from your side of the table. It's self-explanatory. All matters. At some point, citizens of Avon Lake, we believe the truth will come out on the Brownfield Committee and the other suits that we filed. There will be more to come as well. Somebody has to make sure that they're accountable because they don't care. They don't have integrity. They look forward to doing as they've done over years. We have people up here with over 20 years of service, it might not be called service. It might just be hanging out, or I've been able to get reelected again, so I can still do this. They're not doing service. They're doing as they please. That's part of the problem. Mr. Zuber believes in term limits, so that's why he's not running. It's commendable, because at no time has that ever had an opportunity to pass here in Avon Lake that term limits would be coming into effect. At some point, it should. People like Mrs. Fenderbosch and Mr. Koss have been in here almost 20 years. They're working their way towards it. Too long. They haven't done anything to help. They've helped create the problem. At some point, it needs to change. So, the beginning of March, the Ides of March are upon us. March Madness is here. And tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we will begin the City of Avon Lake's own form of March Madness. Because many of these suits are going to be coming to the head, and we're going to get to go to trial. I can't wait for the outcome.
Does anybody else want to come forward and make a statement on any topic? 5 minutes. Seeing none, then this meeting is closed, and we're going to go into the next meeting.
One statement. I just wanted,
Robert's
Yeah.
rules doesn't allow it.
I just wanted to announce my board meeting.
You're gonna, we can, we're going to be announcing the ward meeting later. So, we're going to now rise, if we can. Mr. Smith, you can stay right where you're at, sir. He's going to lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the beginning of the special meeting that was called. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read the roll.
Mr. Arnold?
Here.
Mrs. Fenderbosch?
Here.
Ms. Gentry?
Here.
Mr. Koss?
Here.
Mr. Shamir? Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Zuber?
Here.
Mayor Spetzel?
Here.
Law Director Ebert?
Here.
Finance Director Crossy?
Here.
Public Works Director Liskovic.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any objections to Mr. Shamir not being here? He's under the weather this evening. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go on to legislation. The first reading. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read by ordinance, by title only, ordinance number 25-49.
An ordinance providing for legal representation of the City of Avon Lake and specific officials of the city in actions filed by the State of Ohio, ex-rel. William Zimmerman et al., case number 2024-1711, State of Ohio, ex-rel. William Zimmerman et al., case number 24-CV-214755, and Gerald W. Phillips et al., case number 25-PC-0002, and declaring an emergency.
I move for suspension of the rule requiring 3 readings. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosch?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. It has passed. I move for passage of temporary ordinance number 25-49. And in discussion. On December 12, 2024, a complaint was filed by individuals against the City of Avon Lake and various elected and appointed officials of the city in the matter of State of Ohio, City of Avon Lake, in behalf of William Zimmerman et al. In the Supreme Court, case number 2424-1711. On December 20th, 2024, a second complaint was filed by the same individuals against the city and various elected and or appointed officials of the city in the matter of the state of Ohio in behalf of William Zimmerman et al. In the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, case number 24-CV-214755. On February 25th, 2025, a third complaint was filed by some of the same individuals as filed in the Ohio Supreme Court case and the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas case. In behalf of Gerald W. Phillips versus Mark Spetzel, Mayor of Avon Lake, Lorain, again in the Lorain County Common Pleas Court, Probate Division this time. The case number is 25-PC-00002. The city reasonably anticipates that further complaints may be filed by the individuals. Codified Ordinance Number 234.02 authorizes the city to employ outside legal counsel, quote, if the law director determines that specialized expertise is necessary, or if the legal matter requires additional support, such as but not limited to litigation, end of quote. The law director has determined that outside legal counsel is warranted for each of these actions, as well as future actions filed by the same individuals identified as plaintiffs. The council of the city of Avon Lake has instructed Seeley, Savage, Ebert, and Gorish Company, LPA, to represent the city and the individual defendants named therein in the Ohio Supreme Court case and the Lorain County Common Pleas Court case. The council of the city of Avon Lake has instructed Seeley, Savage, Ebert, and Gorish to represent the city in the probate case, but is unable to represent the mayor, who shall be represented by separate outside counsel in a separate enacted ordinance. Seeley, Savage, Ebert, and Gorich, their amount shall not exceed $35,000 if this legislation should pass. This ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure, the emergency being the necessity of preparing and filing the necessary legal proceedings in a timely manner to represent the city and uphold the laws and regulations of the city. Thus is for the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Therefore, the ordinance shall go into effect immediately after its passage and approval by the mayor. Any further discussion? Mr. Law Director, yes.
Yes, if I may. As everybody aware, a lot of these cases have already been filed against the city, and we've actually filed motions to dismiss that are pending. The firm has been appointed panel counsel. We're on a panel of a couple of insurance companies who are representing the city. The other ones, we are non-panel counsel, so right at this point in time, the insurance coverage is being provided as far as for legal expenses other than the deductible, and those that we do have deductible, some we do not have deductible. But that is the reason this is coming now, because we were originally appointed as panel counsel by the insurance company that represents the city. Thank you.
Thank you for the explanation. Any further discussion by my colleagues? Seeing none, Mrs. Rossmarin, please call the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. This is passed. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read by title only, ordinance number 25-50.
An ordinance providing legal representation for the mayor of the city of Avon Lake in the matter of NRA removal of Mark Spetzel, mayor of Avon Lake, Ohio, NREL, Gerald W. Phillips et al. Versus Mark Spetzel, mayor, Avon Lake, Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, Probate Division, case number 25-PC-00002, and the city of Avon Lake in imminent future litigation and declaring an emergency.
I move for suspension of council's rule requiring 3 readings. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
The motion is passed. I move for passage of temporary ordinance number 25-50. In discussion. Since December 12th, 2024, complaints have been filed against the city of Avon Lake and various elected and/or appointed officials of the city. In behalf of William Zimmerman et al., the Supreme Court case number 2024-1711, and in the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, case number 24-CV-214755. They're the same cases, filed in 2 different jurisdictions. And on February 25th, 2025, a third complaint was filed by some of the same individuals as filed in the Ohio Supreme Court case and the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, in the manner of the removal of Mark Spetzel, Mayor of Avon Lake, Ohio, in behalf of Gerald Phillips et al. In the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, this time in the probate division, case number 25-PC-00002. Codified ordinance number 234.02 provides for outside counsel may be employed to act on behalf of the city or any officer, employee, department, board, or commission of the city. Codified ordinance 234.07 provides that if the law director and the assistant law director have conflicts of interest, then outside counsel may be employed. The law director has determined that a conflict of interest exists in representing Mayor Mark Spetzel in the probate case, such that outside legal counsel is needed to represent the mayor, as a removal action was prompted by and arose from his actions taken by the mayor in performing his official duties and responsibilities. Additional future litigation related to the Ohio State Supreme Court case, the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas case, and the probate case is reasonably anticipated to be imminent. Codified ordinance number 234.02 authorizes the city to employ outside legal counsel, quote, if the law director determines that specialized expertise is necessary, or if the legal matter requires additional support, such as but not limited to litigation, end quote. If passed, the Council of the City of Avon Lake has instructed McDonald Hopkins, LLC, to represent the mayor in the probate court case. And the Council of the City of Avon Lake has instructed McDonald Hopkins, LLC, to represent the city in such other reasonably anticipated imminent litigation. McDonald Hopkins is hereby authorized, if passed, to direct to represent Mark Spetzel, Mayor of the City of Avon Lake, in this matter. The matter is the removal of Mark Spetzel as mayor in behalf of Gerald Phillips. In the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas, Probate Division, case number 25-PC-00002, and that McDonald Hopkins is hereby authorized and directed to represent the city in such further imminent future litigation in the amount not to exceed $25,000. This ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure, the emergency being the necessity of preparing and filing the necessary legal proceedings in a timely manner to represent the mayor of the city in case number 25-PC-00002 and the city in future imminent proceedings, and uphold the laws and regulations of the city, thus for the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Therefore, this ordinance shall go into effect immediately from and after its passage and approval by the mayor. Any further discussion by anyone on council? Mr. Cos?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Fenderbosch. So, you know, I'm really not surprised anymore what happens on Monday nights, you know, and it can be any different thing, any different Monday. If people that watch, and people say to me, and I know other people get it too, how do you guys deal with that? How do you guys deal with that every Monday? How do you do it? I tell them, well, this is sort of what we signed up for, and we're pretty tough, and we don't take it too personally, So that's kind of the standard line. But I got to tell you, this ordinance that we're talking about right now, 2550, and the lawsuit that was filed, which we heard about last week, to remove the mayor from his position using an obscure and never before used, as far as we can tell, legal maneuver in Lorain County to remove an elected person, is offensive to me. And I'm going to tell you why. So just over a year ago, in November of 2023, Mark Spetzel ran for mayor, and he received almost 70% of the vote of the residents in Avon Lake. Almost 70% of the vote. And I'm going to give you three numbers: 8,111, 8, and 1. 8,111. That is the number of Avon Lake residents that voted for him to be mayor by a super majority of the vote. 8. That is the number of people that signed on to this obscure legal maneuver to remove him, in contrast to the 8,111 that voted for that man.
Only needed 5.
Excuse me.
Why?
We have,
Eight
the
people.
floor.
8 people are going to make that decision for over 8,000. One judge to make that decision. One judge to make the decision of whether or not Mark should remain as the mayor or not. If that's not a term of disenfranchisement for those 8,000 voters, I don't know what is. I mean, we're just saying that their votes just don't count. Us 8 people are going to file this and hope to get the judge to agree with us and throw him out, regardless of what the voters said. Now, there is a way to remove an elected person. We all know what it is. It's in our city charter. It's in the charter. The charter that was adopted by the elected leaders of the city, the charter that was voted on by the residents to add and modify things in it, Chapter 3, Section 13, 4C, has a procedure that the city would follow to remove an elected person, and that requires obtaining signatures. 20% of the signatures need from the registered voters from the last election. 20% of those need to sign on to onto a petition to place the item on the ballot. So voters 20% have to sign on. It's a rather large number when you're talking the total number of registered voters in the city. It should not be taken lightly to remove somebody. So 20% are needed to be signed on. Then it goes to the voters, and the voters have the opportunity to remove the mayor, a council person, whomever it may be. It's the voters, not 8 people through an obscure legal maneuver that's never been done before. So this is offensive to me because we are now in a new place. We are in a new place here, and we just allocated up to $60,000, up to $60,000 on just these cases. These aren't even all of them, to defend the city. So, like I said, I'm never surprised anymore, but, to the residents of Avon Lake that voted for that man as the mayor, your vote is being taken away. It is being challenged. It is being stolen from you. And here's the kicker on this whole thing. 2 of the 8 people in the city of 26,000 people, 2 of the 8 people that signed onto this to remove the mayor are running for city council. They want you to vote for them, but they don't care about your vote that you cast last year for the mayor. I don't even know where to begin. So keep that in mind as we move into November. This upcoming November, Mr. Gerald Phillips and Malachi Witt both signed on to this to remove the duly elected mayor of this city. 8 people over 8,111. So I look forward to these things being resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from my colleagues? Giving you a little bit of time.
I support and agree with everything you just said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? I too agree with what you've had to say. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. I made a special effort to be here tonight for this because I'm really disappointed that this action was filed and taken in regard to our city. And I hope that, like Mr. Koss, that this thing can get resolved and that we can get back to peaceful meetings and civil discourse, as Mr. Shamir says. You know, the legal system will resolve these matters in a fair and just way, and I have confidence that that will happen. So thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for all you've done for the city.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, at this point in time, Mrs. Rossmarin, we have a motion on the floor. We have had discussion. It's now time to call the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimously it passed. At this time, Mr. Cos, we have a need for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Thank you. The meeting is now over. Thank you for coming.